So one of the questions I've been getting a lot lately is, how to scale with a VA, how to hire, different tips on whether I recommend using a proxy or a VPN for them, signing into, a screen mirroring software, and a number of other questions. So instead of kind of answering them one by one, I figured I'd just create like a one-stop shop video, and kind of bang out some of the best tips that I think you should kind of keep in mind when hiring or outsourcing jobs, right? And none of these things are, things that I'm just like thinking and like saying you should do. They're all things that I've learned through experience the past, I don't even know what it is, like 4 or 5 months since I've been hiring and building out my own team that does the drop shipping for me, okay? So let's just kind of go through them. I wrote them down. They're a little bit hard to read here, but I'm just going to kind of read them and then kind of elaborate on those points. Literally came up with them last night. So they're all things, like I said, that are really going to help you. And if you have any questions whatsoever, drop them in the comment section down below. I would love to answer them for you, all right? So the first tip is one that I don't see a lot of people doing, and that's pay for production, don't pay hourly, okay? The thing that I realized is, I'd much rather, it's easy for me to quantify like the ROI on a VA's time or a VA's listing if you're paying them for production and not necessarily paying them hourly. Ideally, I understand the attractiveness of paying somebody hourly because you can pay somebody super cheap, like $4 or $5 an hour or something like that, and then you're hiring them for a long period of time, but the production within that time frame isn't, all the way up here because they're getting paid hourly whether they list 5 products or whether they list 50, okay? And so the incentive isn't necessarily there unless obviously you're paying them with an incentive basis as well, okay? I personally like paying them for production and then verifying that they're doing it right and verifying that they're doing it, the way that I've built the system out, because then, I can pay for 20 listings within an hour or 20 listings within 3 hours or whatever it is. And then the VA, as long as they're doing it well and doing it within the system that I built and listing like I've taught them, is incentivized to do it as quickly as possible, and then I can get more listings out throughout the day, right? Rather than me paying them for like an 8-hour window and them getting paid the same amount whether they list 50 in that 8-hour window or if they list, 150, right? It's very, very different. And so I'd recommend paying them for production, A, because it's gonna incentivize them to get them done faster. Then you can obviously outsource and scale your business a lot faster without, whether it's listing or processing orders or whatever it is, right? And on top of that as well, it's easy for you to quantify the ROI on that because you can basically look at it and be like, okay, well, I'm paying my VA X amount a day for them listing, however many they're listing. I'm bringing back, Y amount in profit every single day. So I'm still net positive, and then obviously you're looking at it like a business kind of like that. I did a terrible job of explaining that, but I still hope that you're kind of following that logic, okay? So like I said, recommendation is pay for productivity, not time, or at least start to think about how you can integrate that into your business model if that's something that you think is attractive, okay? At least test it out. I'm telling you, it works a lot better. I've tried both. Now, if you do pay hourly, one of the issues that you'll run into, as well as I did, because one of the things that I did, when I started to try to pay hourly, is you outsource to somebody that lives in another time zone, right? In a lot of ways, unless you're in the U.S. and you're hiring somebody like in South America or Central America or something like that, where you're similar time zones. Typically, you're going to hire somebody in like the Philippines or India or Pakistan or Russia or something like that, right? And so they're on a completely different time zone, so their day is in the middle of your night. And that's an advantage in a lot of ways because, you can have eyes on your business and be doing things in your business when you're sleeping, right? So somebody else is up while you're sleeping, and that can be an advantage. Although it's a disadvantage for you to verify their production because you're not there watching them. You're not there making sure that they're actually doing what they're saying while you're asleep, right? And so if you do decide to pay, hourly, you're definitely going to want something that's going to be able to track the productivity of the employee that you hire, whether it's, even an employee in a normal company, or if you're outsourcing to a VA, that lives overseas that you actually never really meet in person, right? And so one of the things that I recommend is to use a productivity software, is a software on that you can install on computers. and then it will basically track how much clicks they're doing per hour, I believe, how much pages they're turning. It will show you all the data, like these are the URLs that they visited, this is the percentage of the times that they were active on the computer versus idle, and a number of other things. And then it basically feeds all that data into an algorithm to give them a productivity score, right? And so you can literally see, like, over the 8 hours you're paying them, and you want to average it out, right? Like, I'm not saying be like a crazy person and be like, you only did X, Y, and Z in the past 8 hours, like when you wake up in the morning. You want to kind of track that over time and average it out. But one of the things it will show you is, like, if your VA is super, super productive, or if your VA is like super, super lazy, you can literally see those major differences, because as you hire more and more people, you'll start to notice, like, okay, this person's really productive, this person's not really productive, and everything in between, right? So a productivity software is a no-brainer if you plan on scaling your business, because ultimately, if you're hiring someone to do a job, you need to be making sure that they're getting that job done. Otherwise, what's the point of paying them to do anything, right? So that's the first tip, is pay for production. Don't pay, hourly or for time, because it incentivizes them to obviously be better within that time frame. You can scale your business a lot faster. And if you do decide to go the time route or the hourly route, at the very least, track their productivity with the software, like the video that I dropped before, okay? Now, the next tip is to create implementable systems, okay? Instead of hiring somebody and, basically trying to retrain them like a new person every single time with like a new way to do it, or, whatever it is, instead just create an easily implementable system that you can then, train somebody with that same exact system, and it makes it that much easier, right? So for example, an easy example of this is like a listing system. So I've created tutorials that I literally give to every single new VA that I hire for a job, and it builds out a system, right? Like, I don't give them the freedom to be like, I want you to just use your judgment and this and that, because then that's going to change VA to VA, right? Instead, what I do is I built a system. I'm like, this is how you should list. This is what you're looking for in the image. This is what you need to mark the product up for. This is how I want you to do the description. This is how I want you to do the shipping. This is how I want you to do the tags. And it's literally a checklist that they go through, so that a 5-year-old could do that. And then obviously it doesn't necessarily, you're not leaving it open to chance based on the ability of your VA, right? You're training them to implement a system, which is very, very different than you just training up a VA to do something themselves, right? They're implementing a system versus them just kind of making their own judgment calls, okay? And it's very, very different. And then not only that, which is an advantage, on top of that, you're able to, you don't ever want to replace somebody, because it is, even with like building out systems like that and tutorials, it is a headache hiring somebody new, verifying that they're actually doing the work right, because like that takes time out of my business where I'm actually doing other stuff. So like, you want to train people long term and have them stay with your company, and that's another reason that one of the tips we're going to talk about is paying them a little bit more. But on top of that, even if, like, God forbid they were to leave you, or you did find that they were a bad employee, or whatever it is, right? Or they're not as consistent or reliable as you'd hoped, you can just as easily hire somebody new and then just train them to implement the system, and it makes it a whole lot easier, right? It also makes your business a lot more predictable, okay? So instead of training people and kind of giving them the creative freedom, what you should do instead is create easily implementable systems and then train your VA to implement that system, okay? Again, that means that they're more replaceable, and then you can use that to implement or to improve your system as you see them go through it. You can then improve your system with the feedback that you get from your employee or your VA implementing that system, and then that helps you train better employees, and vice versa, right? It's like that snowball, that compound effect, that feedback loop, okay? So the next one is pay them more than you want to, okay? And I actually stumbled across this accidentally. It makes sense, and I've heard a lot of other business owners say this about hiring, but nobody when they're first starting wants to pay more than they have to, right? A lot of people are looking for like the cheapest option possible, because that gives you the most profit potential possible for the same job. And that makes total sense. I get that logic as a business owner. It makes 100% sense, right? But I actually stumbled across this accidentally, because the very first person that I hired, I completely lucked out with. They've been great. But the reason they've been so great is because they're great and they're a phenomenal employee, and they're hardworking. They they have a hunger to learn new things, and I love that about them. They're a great employee, but also because I pay them a significant amount more than I should, right? I don't even know what it is, but it's got to be like 300 or 4%, more than they should be getting. And I didn't know that. I did that accidentally in the beginning because I didn't know necessarily what I should pay a VA because it was the first VA I ever paid, right? But because I paid them so much and because I paid them more, and you don't have to pay them that much more, right? I'm going to tie this into the other VAs that I've hired here in a second. But what I realized is that person's always willing to work. They're always waiting, and ready to work. They're always willing to learn and implement new systems. They're always looking for ways to care and improve my business. They treat it like it's their business. And they're really going out of their way to do good work, make sure I know certain things. They're always reporting issues back to me instead of seeing some of my other VAs just kind of go through issues and because they don't necessarily care as much. Whereas this person that I'm paying more treats it more like it's their own business because it is their kind of livelihood and they're getting paid a lot more, right? And so you want to think about that. I'm not saying you have to overpay, significantly, but pay people a little bit more than you think the job is worth, or think that somebody in that area of the world would earn or is worth, right? Because they're going to care about your business a lot more. They're going to work a lot harder. They're going to be open to solving problems and, moving through issues and finding good ways around them, rather than just trying to look at it as okay, this is another outsourced job I'm being hired for that I don't really care about because I can get hired. If I put myself in that mentality of somebody overseas getting paid $4 an hour or $5 an hour, right? What's the difference? Why would I care about the person hiring me for $4 or $5 an hour when I can just as easily go out and get another $4 or $5 an hour job, is what I'm saying, right? Whereas if somebody's paying me $6 or $7 an hour, it's going to be kind of hard to replicate and go out and find somebody. It's going to be harder, at least, to go out and find another job at that price point. So my incentive is to care more about this job and make sure that I do a good job, right? And so that's a no-brainer, but I'm telling you, that's not just like a theory. Anecdotally, I've seen that in my business. And the very first guy that I hired is still with me to this day. He's hands down my best employee. He works the hardest. He's constantly willing to learn. He's constantly bringing issues to me when he sees them. Not that I want people, he solves issues, don't get me wrong, on his own, which I love, because he's he I don't know what I'm trying to say specifically, but he's great. I'm telling you, just test at least paying somebody a little bit more. I also have other employees that I pay a little bit more, not all the way up to what that is. And they also work a lot harder than other VAs that I brought in and tested at lower price points, okay? I'm telling you, it's going to make a massive difference in your business. It's going to improve the quality of your business, whether it's the listings, whether it's the customer service, the order processing. Pay them a little bit more, and you will see that reflected in your business, okay? The next thing is to incentivize them, okay? So the way that you can incentivize them, you can do a profit share based on the, the significance that your business brings in at the end of the month. You can, there's a lot of ways to work around that. You can pay them a bonus for hitting a certain amount of listings, or, bringing in a certain amount of money, right? So you can say if my business nets, X amount, then I'll pay you a $100 bonus at the end of the month, or something like that, right? And that incentivizes them to care as well and to continue to work harder because they'll want to earn that bonus, right? It's an incentive-based contract, essentially, right? And you see this all over the place, and it works very, very well when you're hiring as well, okay? And on top of that, one of the other ways that I do it is I'll incentivize them with a raise. So I'll start people off a little bit more, whether that's $4, $5, $6, $7 for whatever the job is, whatever it is, right? And basically what I'll say is, listen, I know that, this is pretty solid right now, but if you help me scale my business and we can scale it, this is what I think we can get it to, right? This is what we're doing now, potentially. This is what I think we can get it to. And if we get it to that, whether that's this month or next month, then we'll consider, talking about giving you a raise and maybe bumping you up $1 an hour, which is a significant amount over, 40, 50, 60 hours a week or whatever they're working. And so that's another way that you can incentivize them. But whatever it is, work incentives into, your VAs and hiring process. It's gonna make your employees care more. It's gonna make them work harder, and it's gonna make their productivity skyrocket, okay? There's 3 more here. So one really briefly I want to touch on is foreign contractor forms. I didn't know about this until my accountant actually told me about it, but like apparently, and like this is not coming from me, I don't know anything about this stuff. I understand like the basics of accounting and the basics of hiring, but like realistically, I'm still very kind of, green at it. I don't know that much. And so it was brought to my attention that if you're paying significant amounts of money to like overseas people, and it's not done through like website like Fiverr or Upwork or anything like that, or onlinejobs.ph, which you shouldn't realistically be paying somebody long-term through those anyway. Like, doesn't make sense if you're building out a long-term hiring relationship. You need to have them sign a foreign contractor form, okay? And so you can look into that, talk to your accountant about it, but that's something that you're gonna need to report on your taxes. Otherwise, like, it's gonna be a red flag. I was led to believe it would be a red flag if I'm sending tens of thousands of dollars overseas in the name of contract labor, okay? So make sure that you get a foreign contractor form signed. It's gonna save you a headache in the long run. Oh, sorry, Ben. Just almost wheeled over my dog. One sec. Little drink. I'm running out of voice. All right, so 2 more here. A lot of people, they use sites like onlinejobs.ph, or they use sites like Fiverr, and they use sites like Upwork to hire, and that can definitely work, and I recommend that you do that as well, because it's an easy way to kind of test a bunch of different people. It's almost like dating, right? Like, you get to kind of date a bunch of employees and see who kind of fits it, who's the best, and then obviously you bring them on for like the long-term relationship, right? So you get that benefit, but then, so that's what you want to do in the beginning, right? Like, you want to use these job platforms to kind of test a bunch of people and see who's the best candidate. But then on top of that, like, once you find out who's the best, you want to take them off the platform and build an actual relationship with them, okay? And so what I recommend that you do is, once you take them off the platform, you can pay them directly with I use either PayPal or Western Union. There's a lot of other payment processors out there that you can use. Those 2 work very, very well for me. And it really is a no-brainer at that point to kind of build that long-term relationship, because then like, when you're paying them directly, they're getting a higher percentage, right? So it costs you less because you're not paying the site fee, whether that's onlinejobs.ph, whether that's Fiverr, whether that's Upwork. You're not paying the site fee, so it costs you less to get them to do the job. And on top of that, they net more, so they make more, so they care about your business more, so they work harder, etc., because they're also not getting, the cut in site fee, right? So it's a no-brainer at that point. Use those websites to test people and date, for lack of a better word. But then once you find a good candidate, then bring them off the platform and pay them directly. And then get them on a messaging app as well, like WhatsApp. For a lot of them use WhatsApp. I use WhatsApp. You can also use Facebook Messenger, although I have run into some issues with Facebook Messenger. Like, when Facebook goes down or my account gets suspended, I can't contact my VAs. So bring them off another platform, maybe even WhatsApp, or email if you want to do that, or whatever it is for you, okay? And finally, the last one, and before the last one too, there is one other one that I'm just thinking of now, and that is that I don't recommend that you use a proxy. I've talked about this in other videos, so that's why I didn't kind of add it in here. I don't recommend that you have them log into a proxy from their own computer, because it's going to set off a lot of red flags. I don't think that that's a good idea, and there's not any proxies or VPNs that I really trust to actually do that I don't think Facebook's going to detect, right? Like, you can go that route, you can roll the dice if you want to, but one of the best things that you can do, I'd go pick up a computer right now, but they're over there on their own tables and my VAs are working on them, is just literally have a computer dedicated to a VA or to a task, right? Or even set your computer up at night if you only have one of them, and then use a screen mirroring or a login type of software where they can log into that computer themselves from that software, and then operate your computer with your software on your computer, your IP address, and it's a safer way to do it. And you can use TeamViewer, you can use Splashtop. I like Splashtop. I still use Splashtop to this day. It works phenomenal. In my opinion, screen mirroring software is over proxies all day. It works a lot better and it's a lot safer, okay? And then you don't have to pay, you don't have to pay for them to use software, right? Like, they're using the software that you've already paid for. You don't have to pay those subscription fees for them or whatever it is, right? And finally, the last one is to trust but verify, okay? So, for example, like, Like with the productivity software, that's one that I've touched on before. You can check with productivity software, or you can count the listings if you're having them do the listings. You can go back and look at the messages if you're having them do customer service. You can go back and check the orders if you're having them do order processing, although chances are you don't really need to check the orders because you'll find out very, very quickly if they're messing up orders, if they're doing the order processing. So what I'm saying is trust your employees. You don't want to be like the overbearing, like micromanaging boss that's like, you need to do this, this, and this, and like you're always critiquing them. You need to give them the space to make mistakes, learn from their mistakes, and you need to trust them, right? But at the same time, it's like Ronald Reagan said, like trust but verify, right? Like you need to give them the space to trust, you need to give them space and trust them, but at the same time, you then need to verify that they're actually getting the job done, getting it done right, and doing the work that you're paying them to do, right? You're hiring them for a job, and so that's what matters, okay? And there's many ways that you can trust, or there's many ways that you can verify, but regardless of what it is, figure out a system that works for you and then go out and implement it, all right, guys? So I think that was, what was that, 8 overall. It was really 7, but I added the 8th one in there. So 8 tips for hiring a VA and scaling your business. Really hope it helps.